Hello, world history students. Today we will be discussing Japanese expansionism, specifically the Japanese Empire just before and during World War II. And we're going to look at the question of what role did modernization and Shinto play in Japan's desire to expand. So first, I just have some questions for you in your notes. Number one, should the U.S. have a state religion? What I mean by a state religion is a religion that everybody adheres to, they follow. This is the idea with Shinto, and so this is why I asked this question, right? A religion that brings everyone together. Now, this can be a confrontational issue um, when you talk about different religions and so forth, but it gives us the right frame of mind to think about the Japanese and how they saw the world, how they saw their nation, how they still do in many respects. Number two, what would be the benefits of such a religion? How would this benefit people if there was hypothetically one religion for all Americans? Who would be the gods or god of such religion, right? Would it be George Washington? Would it be the worship of George Washington and Thomas Jefferson? Or would it be something else? And then finally, what would be the core beliefs? Would the 4th of July be not just a national holiday, but also some type of religious sort of holiday? So just some things to consider in your notebook, and the whole idea with that is to get the right mindset for talking about the Empire of Japan. So Japanese modernization, this means getting things like modern factories, playing baseball like the Americans, dancing the foxtrot, trying to act more modern. And the goal with this in the 1920s, and really it starts in the 1800s, is to be able to compete with Europeans who are setting up colonies all over East Asia. And East Asia is the region that Japan feels they rightfully control, and that's their sphere of influence. And they have the Dutch in the East Indies, and they have the French in Indochina, and they have all types of different European, British especially, settlements in China itself. There's also the US and the Philippines, so there's a lot of competition in the region, and Japan feels like they need to keep up with the European nations, and so that's why they go this route of modernization, especially modern weaponry. So Japan has a state religion, and Shinto is what they refer to. And this Shinto religion, which is actually normally a very peaceful religion, but you can always skew things to your needs. And the Japanese Empire skews this religion and starts focusing on a sort of divinity of the Japanese Empire to justify expansionism to other lands to make Japan great, and militarize the entire nation. Not necessarily everybody's a member of the military itself, but the whole focus of the nation becomes making the military greater. So whether it's making materials in factories or how you train children in school, this Shinto state religion gets intertwined and skewed in many ways to serve this idea of a powerful Japanese empire. So Japanese expansion has two main motives. One is to increase Japan's access to raw materials. I don't know if you're aware, Japan's an island nation, and so they're limited to what they can have. And also they want to display their status as a modern nation. This is a defensive tactic because they see Europeans taking over colonies all over East Asia, and they feel if they view themselves as a modern nation, they will receive respect and not have to worry about European nations trying to colonize them. And also they feel they've earned this respect because part of the Shinto religion is the sacredness of the Japanese nation. And so they want this respect. Everyone wants respect, and Japan feels that they've earned it. And there are many instances where the West does not treat them as equals, and this upsets them. So they want to show that they are a modern nation. So this starts very early. You're talking 1895 and a fight over control of Korea, the peninsula that's going to come out of mainland China. And Japan does very well in this war, even though China is a very large nation, has many people. Japan is just much better organized. They've already started pushing modernization with modern weapons and modern military tactics, and this gives them the advantage in East Asia, even over a much larger foe like China. So the Russo-Japanese War, this is going to be an actual fight against a European power, even though it's in Asia because Russia is so expansive. and they're going to win. Japan's going to stun the world by defeating the Russians and completely defeating the Russians in East Asia. And this is going to give them control over an area that's great for growing wheat, which is Manchuria. And it's going to make the Russians look really bad. And this is, of course, before World War I, and many believe this is part of the reason why Russia wanted to jump into World War I, was to recover from this very embarrassing loss to the Japanese. But there's problems with modernization. Improved medical care and new forms of lifestyle cause population growth in Japan. And so suddenly there's not enough room for everyone, and people start considering moving out from Japan, moving to different regions like Hawaii and the Philippines and Korea, so that they can have a better life, a less cramped lifestyle, if you will. And this is going to spread Japanese influence throughout East Asia. Japanese colonies are going to be everywhere. You're going to have in New Guinea, the Dutch East Indies, the French Indochina. Large parts of China, especially the populated parts of China, are going to fall to the Japanese. And this is going to be a large reason why the United States and China are going to be allies during World War II. So you can see Japan has tremendous control over East Asia. But the main reason is for access to oil. Modern weapons, modern vehicles require oil, and Japan does not have a natural source in their homeland. So this is a big reason why they feel like they need to expand, not only to show their status, but to have access to these raw materials. The growth of their military, and part of the reason why they ally with Germany and Italy, they become increasingly militaristic in the interwars period, that period between World War I and World War II. And they have a lot of ideas about purity in the Japanese nation, which is things that you also hear in Germany, with the idea of an Aryan race that has to remain pure and thus get rid of different groups, especially the Jews. And then you also have this same concept of purity in Italy, sort of looking back to the Roman Empire and what went wrong, and they need to set things right again. So all three of these regions that get into what is essentially fascism in all parts, they get big on their history, thinking about their history, thinking about how they can bring back that purity, that idea of a better time in the past. And a big way that they hope to do this is to grow their military. So the Japanese sphere of influence is seen sort of like the American Monroe Doctrine, where President James Monroe put out to European countries that the Americas are off limits, that this is our sphere of influence, and to stay out. And it worked to a degree. But the Japanese saw East Asia as under their sphere of influence. This is their neighborhood, if you will. And they felt very disrespected by the Western powers, and usually for correct reasons. They felt very disrespected by the West. And so they wanted to make sure that everyone knew that this was their area. And by all of these different countries, different European and Western countries, setting up colonies there, they were disrespecting them. And finally, we have Pearl Harbor on December 7th, 1941. Japan's going to attack the U.S. naval base in Hawaii, and this act is going to pull the United States into World War II. You'll learn a lot more about this in U.S. history, but the key here is that it's going to pull the United States in on the side of the Allies and against the Axis, and this is going to set the tone for how the war is going to go. So now I have a little clip here you can watch from the movie Pearl Harbor, and it shows a very romantic version of the attack on Pearl Harbor, but if you haven't seen it before, it's worth a look, and just answer some of these questions in your notebook and submit your work through Schoology. Have a good day.